Hi, everyone. We're going to get started now. My name is Valerie Smith, and I'm a librarian here at Parsippany, and I'm going to be taking you through this class on the basics of Excel. Before we start talking about Excel, just a few brief things about how I'm going to conduct the class. I'm going to keep you muted for most of the class. Periodically, I will pause for questions. If you have a question at that time, there's a little icon on your screen that says raise hand. I just want you to click on that icon. I will then unmute you so you can ask your question to the best I can. So let's get started. Now, it occurs to me that when I've been doing Excel online, I haven't been spending as much time talking about some basic spreadsheet concept as I do when I teach in person. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a little bit of that this class. So let's go over to Excel and see. Okay. So what we have here is actually an image of a spreadsheet. And this is where the actual term for spreadsheet comes from. It's from ledger books like this, where they were opened and the people would write across the two sheets for the whole width of the book. So this is a payroll from 1903. And this is how a spreadsheet worked then, and it's still more or less how it works today. You'll see here up at the top, you have these little labels that's saying the name, the occupation. Here you have the days of the week the person worked, the total number of hours they worked, what their pay rate is, and finally what they got paid for their week of work. So if you see here, you'll notice here they have down here the hours for each day of the week the person worked. Then they add that up to get the total hours they worked for the week. They then multiply that by their rate of pay, and then they'd write that down here. So this is basically how a spreadsheet still works now, except it does the math for you. You'll notice here that if you scroll down the sheet fully to the bottom, you could then add up the entire everyone's pay for the week and get the total amount that's due for the that you have to pay for the week for the total payroll for that week. Notice here I like this here that there's a few little scratched out math problems where someone was doing the work for working out the totals here. So yes, this is what a spreadsheet was, and that still is basically what a spreadsheet is. That's primarily what they're used for, is doing math and organizing information in that kind of way. Okay, so we're going to get started over with our own spreadsheet now. So unlike those written spreadsheets, we're not writing across two sheets of paper. We're also not very limited. We have almost an infinite space in which we can work. So what you have here is the basic organization of the spreadsheet. Divided into a series of rows and columns. All the columns are labeled with a letter, all the rows with a number. Every intersection of row and column is called a cell, and that cell will be identified by the letter of the column and the number of the row. So for example, right now we're in cell A1 because it's in column A, row 1. If I click over here, I'm now in cell S15 because I'm in column S and row 15. So that's basically how cells work. And you're going to be using, whenever you write formulas or do anything in Excel, you're usually referring to the address of the cell itself. You are not going to be referring to whatever content is in the cell. Okay. Another important concept for Excel is the cell range. And the cell range is any group of contiguous cells. A cell range is then identified by the cell at the top left corner and the bottom right corner. So if I select some cells here, this is cell range C4 colon H4 because this is cell C4 and this is cell H4. And that includes all the cells in between that are currently highlighted. I can make that bigger. Oops. And now this cell would be, this cell range would be C4 H12 because that's what this cell is, H12 down there. And what we're doing a formula, we will be using a cell range a little bit later in the class. Okay. So another important thing to keep in mind when you're working in Excel is to pay attention to what your mouse pointer looks like when you're going to be doing something. So you'll notice here, as I'm moving my mouse pointer around this particular cell, it's changing shape. And that can mean it can do different things. So if the cell, it looks like this, where it's a fat white plus sign, that will let me select a bunch of cells. It looks like this, that sort of black four-pointed star with the arrow, that let me move cells around. So if there was content in that cell, that would be moving. And last we have here is Autofill, which lets you automatically fill in contents for the cells, and we'll be demonstrating a little bit later how that works and how that can save you a lot of time. Okay. Just a few more basics up here. You have your ribbon, like you do in all Office programs. Ribbons divide into a series of tabs. And when you click on those tabs, the commands that are visible in the ribbon will change. For this particular class, we're going to be spending almost all our time in the Home tab. We're not going to be going around to a lot of different tabs. We're mostly going to be in the Home tab for this. Okay. So that was just a quick overview of the basics. Before I move on to the next part, does anyone have any questions? Just remember, if you missed the very beginning, if you do have a question, you'll see there's an icon on your screen where you can raise your hand. And when I ask you, you can just click on that icon and I will then unmute you so you could ask your question. Okay, so no questions. So now we're going to be talking about the spreadsheet we're going to be creating today. So this is going to be called Sales by Product Category. And we're going to start by just putting the title up here at the top. Okay, so I just want you to notice here that this text is going over a number of columns. So you can see it's over columns B and C as well as A. But all that text is considered to be contained within cell A1. So I'm clicking here on cell A1, and you look up here, which is called the formula bar. It's showing you what's in that cell. If I click on B1 here, notice it's blank because there's nothing in cell B1. As long as I don't type anything in cell B1, this is going to stay completely visible to you. So I'm just going to leave it as it is right now with the sales as product category as the title of our sheet. The next thing to do is when you're creating a spreadsheet is you have to think about what information you have and how you want to use that information. This is particularly important if you're going to be creating a spreadsheet with information you want to use with a different program. Say, for example, you're creating an address book to use with Mail Merge in Word. You have to really think about how to organize your information so that not only will you understand it and the people you're showing it to will understand it, but so that the computer itself can understand it. Now, for this particular spreadsheet, we don't have to worry too much about that because we're not going to be moving the information between two different programs. But next week, when I talk about creating an address book, we will be discussing more detail, thinking about how a computer will understand your information you're putting into Excel. But we mostly just have to make it so it's understandable to ourselves. So you do have to think about how you're going to put your information in. So we're going to be doing here a bunch of sales data from a store. It's going to be for a full year, so January through December. And it's going to be done by several different product categories and how much each category has been sold. So we're going to start here, just a row down, with what the category is going to be. So we're just going to add their category. And then going down underneath there, we're going to list the different categories of products we have. Sorry. Armor, boots, swords, and bows. Okay, so we've done all that down. These are the different categories of products we're going to be talking about. Next thing we want to do is we want the months, and we wanted those to go across here at the top. And then for each product category for each month, we'll put in our sales data. So we're going to start here with January. And instead of typing in every month, we're going to use Autofill to fill them in for the rest of the month. So I'm going to position my mouse pointer down here. You notice it's turning into a black plus sign. I'm then going to click and drag it across until I got the 12 cells and I get to December. And it fills in all those months. So it saved me all the time of having to type in every one of those months' individuality. Okay, so now I'm going to start putting in my sales data here. Now, there is no right or wrong way to do this. Depends, people think differently about how numbers should be put in. Just basically do whatever makes more sense for you. So I'm doing this going across. Other people might go down columns. It depends on just what works best for you. Okay. And I am using the tab key to go from cell to cell. So every time I hit the tab key, it goes to the cell to the right of the one I'm currently in. If you want to go back, you can just use the Shift tab, which will move it back. You can also use your arrow keys to move around. You can also use the Enter key, but Enter sometimes does strange things in Excel, so I don't use it very often, but your arrow keys, you can use the Tab key, and you can even just use the mouse to click into whatever cell you want to go in. So there's a lot of different ways to enter data into Excel, and I don't think you should be, however works for you is how you should do it. Okay. So I'm not going to make you sit here while I type in all the numbers for the rest of the sheet. I'm going to switch over to a sheet that already has the numbers for the rest of the categories filled in. Okay. So here we have all the data filled in right now. So we have all our information here. We also have something down here where we're going to be doing the totals for each month and then also calculating the percentage of sales for each month. We also want to do it here. We're going to have other totals. So here we'll have the totals for each sales category, product category. And here we'll have the percentage of sales for each product category. So you might notice here that there's a slight problem. There's no column here for that total. And sometimes this happens when you're creating a spreadsheet and you have a situation where you need to put information in between two existing groups of pieces of information. To do that, you need to either insert a column or a row into your spreadsheet, whichever one you need. And we're going to start with a column. And when you're inserting a column, you want to start in the column. I tend to mess this up. It's the column to the left of where you want your new column. So we're going to start in column M. So we're going to insert some new space here. So let's hope I'm doing this correctly. From here, you're going to go up here to this section of the menu. This is the insert command. This is different from the insert tab, which is over here. This is the insert command we're going to use. And I'm going to click here on the drop down. And I want to insert a column. And it went into the wrong place because I always forget that. Sorry about that. I am really bad at remembering that. So you start in the column to the right of the one you want your cells to go, your new column to be. Click on Insert, and then Insert Sheet Columns. This is one of those places where Google Sheets is better than Excel because they ask you whether you want to put your column to the right or the left of your existing column. Don't know why they don't do this in Excel as well. But we have our new column, and we're going to say total here. And that's going to be put in that's where we're going to put our total for sales by each category. We're also going to add in a new row. And I'm just going to put that between swords and staffs. And again, I'm just going to start here. I'm going to start in the row below where I want my new row to go. Go to Insert, Insert Sheet Rows. And that time I got it right. So now I'm going to put in my new set of data. So here we go. While I'm typing this in, does anyone have any questions? Okay. Lavinis, am I saying that correctly? Yeah, Lavinis, what's your question?
My question is, in each, what are those? Months below, what are those numbers mean? Like, what are those numbers for?
Oh, this is sales information. It's how much was sold.
How result for what?
The different products category here. So you really don't have to think too hard about what these different categories are, what's going on here, because it's kind of a made up scenario just to give some data to work with. This isn't really real numbers. It's just to give you an idea of how it would work. Does that make sense?
I don't understand it quite well.
So we're creating this spreadsheet to add up sales for this particular company for what they've sold for each month in these categories of armor, boots, staffs, etc. So we're going to be adding this up here. And you know what? I think this is going to become clearer as we go through and start doing the math. So why don't you just give it a minute, and we'll see. We'll check back in with you in a little bit, okay?
Okay.
All right. Okay. Gloria, what's your question?
Why do you use that group of insert instead of going to the tab that says insert?
Because the command's not there. If you go to, I think, well, maybe it's there, because a lot of times the commands are in two places, but here's the insert tab. This is for a lot of stuff like pictures, charts.
Oh, I see.
Yes. So if you just want to insert cells, this is the command you want to use.
I have Excel opened up on my laptop. I'm using Zoom on the iPad, but when I click on that green, nothing happens under insert.
It doesn't change the commands up at the top here?
No, I clicked on N, like the whole column is gray, and now I'm on insert. What do I do on insert? Is there a special thing?
So you want to insert a sheet column?
Oh, I didn't go to that one. Nothing moved, but okay, I won't waste your time.
Okay, just so you know, if you don't have text in it, it might not be, it would have inserted the column, but it might not look like it did because there's nothing to move around.
I get it. Okay, yeah, my sheet's blank. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and Rishi? Rishi, do you have a question? Rishi? I can't hear you if you're talking. Okay, Rishi, I can't hear you. I don't know what's going on your side. You are definitely unmuted. So if you can't get it up, you can put it, okay, so are you in the chat? Yeah, hi. So what's your question? You can put it in the chat. Okay, so why don't you try putting that question in the chat, and I'm going to move on and I'll go back to it as soon as you get it in there, okay? Bernard, is that what that is? Bernard Ulrich? You have a question? Bernard? Okay, I'm not hearing you. If you, so I don't know what's going on your side. We'll be, yeah, so I can't hear you right now. So if you have a question, also you can put it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to move on and start talking about a little bit more about what's going on, and that's going to actually answer your question, Rishi. Okay, so Rishi was asking in the chat, why are there two totals and percentages? That's because we're going to calculate two things. So here, we're going to calculate, in this row, we're going to calculate the total for sales for each month. So we're going to add up all these numbers. And over here, we're going to calculate the sales for each category for the year. So we're going to add up these numbers. Okay, so that's why we have two different totals and percentage of sales. And as I put this information in and put the formulas in, I think this will become a little bit clearer. Okay, so before we move on to doing that adding, we're just going to do a quick little bit to adjust the column width. So you'll notice here a few columns we have here. So September, particularly November, December, they're a little too cramped, so you can't see the full space for each category for each month. So we're just going to use a quick autofit to fix that. And that's just, you can do that. What autofit does is it automatically adjusts the column width to fit whatever is at that moment the largest entry in this, and the largest entry in the column. And you can do that by just double clicking on the little line between the two letters for the column. So I'm just doing that for a few months here, so it's a little bit spread out. It's going to do it here. So you see that got that. Why? Because it's product category one up here. So yes, that's just a little quick fix so that it's not cramped up so much. There's other things you can do with column width. We might get to that a little bit later, but for right now, we just want to do a little bit quick fix so it looks a little bit nicer so we can see. Okay, so now we're moving on to the formulas, and this is the thing that makes Excel such a powerful tool, is the way it can do math. And we're going to be using some very simple math for this particular class. We're just going to be discussing adding a bunch of numbers up and then calculating a percentage using them. So let's get started. We're going to start here in cell N4. And what we're going to do here is we're going to add up all these numbers here. Oh, actually, wait, hold on. We're going to do it actually down here. Sorry about that. We're going to do it for the month first. Just misread later on in my notes. Sorry about that. So we're going to start by working with the month of January. And we're just going to add up the total sales, all these numbers for the month of January. And we're going to start, the first time we do this, we're going to be doing our formula manually. We're just going to enter in each cell individually. And the way you create a formula in Excel is you always start with the equal sign. And then you're going to put in the different cells you want to include in the formula. You're not going to put the number. You're going to put the cells. So I want to add up all these numbers. I'm not going to type in 5639, 3836, etc. I'm going to type in the cells. So B4, B5, B6, etc. So starting with the equal sign, and I'm going to type in B4 plus B5. And if you notice here, as I'm typing this in, those cells are appearing in different colors. You'll notice that the colors correspond to the letters in the text in the formula. This is just so you can see more easily what you're entering in and what cells you're including in your formula. So I've got all the cells I want to add up together. Like I said, it's just equals, add up all these numbers, hit the enter key, and it gives me a total for all these numbers. And what this does is, the reason you use the cells instead of the numbers is because therefore if you change the numbers, they will change the totals. So let's say we find out we sold more bows in January than we thought. This is now 2,500. Let's enter that new number in, and my total changes as well. So this is a big time saver. So if you can create the formulas once, and you can put the data in individually. You could even create the formulas and have a spreadsheet ready so I could set this up, copy it for year after year after year. And then just as the sales data came in, I could just type these numbers in for each month, and I don't have to recreate the formulas for each one. An even bigger time saver here is autofill. So we used autofill earlier to fill in the months of the year. You can also use autofill with formulas. So if I use autofill here, and I click and drag, it copies the formula to each cell. But what it does is it looks at the positioning for this cell, where we started, this particular formula. It says it's in column B, and it's got all these numbers, everything it's adding up is in column B. And then so when I copy it to column C, it changes all those references to C. And it does the same, does the same thing for D, E, etc. All across here, it makes changes to the formula to reflect its new position in the spreadsheet. So as you can see, that saves a lot of time. You don't have to enter in the formula individually for each cell. Okay, so does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, so now we're going to be calculating the total for each category across the year. So we're going to start here in cell N4, but instead of doing like we did before, where we entered in individually each cell we want to include, we're going to use a cell range here, because that's going to save us a little bit more time and effort. And it's also going to eliminate the possibility of putting in a number or cell reference wrong. So again, we're going to start with the equals. But this time, instead of typing in the cells, we're going to type the word sum. And there's a whole bunch of different formulas that are built in within Excel. You can see we're getting a little drop down with a list of some of them here. And these are just the ones that are related to the word sum. Math in Excel can get very, very complicated, just so you know, but we're doing very simple stuff here. So sum, this is a command that tells it to add together all the numbers that are included in the range we're going to use. You're going to open a parenthesis, and then we're going to select the cells we want to include. So that's cells B4 through M4. You can see the cell range is showing up there. Close the parenthesis, hit enter, and that adds up all those numbers right there. Again, I'm going to use autofill to fill that in for the rest of them. And actually, we're going to go all the way down. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. So we're going to have all of them added up here. And then we have the total sales for each category for the year. So we have these different things here. And now what you should see here, you should notice that what we should get here is a number that should be the same whether we add up all these numbers or whether we add up all these numbers. I'm actually going to, let's try that one. Yeah, so I used a copy and paste to copy the formula. Again, it changed those cell references. And so this is adding up all these numbers across here, and that's giving us our total here. Okay, so Gloria, you have a question? Gloria?
Yeah, I think I saw it, like with the sum, equal sum, parentheses, the beginning cell, colon, and then you put the ending cell.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I missed it the first time, but I saw it when you,
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, so now we've done the sort of the totals, we've done all the adding it up. Now we want to calculate the percentage of sales for both each month and then of course also for each category. So, okay. All right, so what we need to do here to calculate this would be to say divide this number, which is the sales for January, by the total sales for the year, this number. So if we do that formula here, we'd have equals this cell, B12, divided by this cell over here, N12. And that gives us our percentage right here. Now, if we use autofill here, it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is we look here, it's saying here, so it's got C12, which is correct, this cell, but it's dividing it by O12, which is over here and doesn't have any data in it. So it's trying to divide by 0 and you cannot do that. So what we need to do here is write our formula so that regardless of where it's positioned, it will always divide by what is in cell N12. And that's actually pretty easy. All we need to do to change the formula is instead of just saying N12, we need to put a $sign before the N and before the 12 in that cell reference. And that will fix the formula. And if we use autofill now, it'll fill in for the rest of them. We're going to do something similar up here for each category. So here we want equals divided by this cell. And again, I'm going to make this an absolute reference. And then use autofill to fill that in for the rest of the cells. Okay, Rishi, what is your question? Rishi? Okay, so we're going to move on. Okay, again, so simply put, when you create a formula, we're doing the percentage calculation here. I'll just redo it for the year. So what we want here is we want to divide this number, so the total sales for armor for the year, divided by this, which is the total sales for the year. And again, we need this cell reference to be absolute, so we're going to add a dollar sign between the N and the 12. And that's making sure that wherever we copy this formula to, Excel will always refer to that particular cell for this part of the formula. And hit the Enter key, that'll fill it in. And then we're going to autofill copy it down there. Okay, so right now we have all this information here, but it doesn't look very good. In particular, we're dealing with money here, but we don't have any currency symbols in place. We have the percentages, but there are these like long decimal places, which are kind of hard to read. So what we're going to do now is we're going to be formatting our numbers so it looks more like what it's supposed to be. So we're going to be adding the currency symbols in, and we're also going to be adding the percentages in as well. Let's start with the currency symbols. So first we're going to select all the cells we want to add currency symbols to. That's going to be this bunch here. And then we're going to go up here, same place we did the insert, but we're going to use the format command there. And we're going to go down here to the format cells option, to currency. And there's a couple different things you can do here, which are kind of fun. For example, it defaults to the dollar sign symbol, but if you want to use a different currency, you got a lot of options here, as you can see. Now let's go with pounds just for fun. You can also adjust how many decimal places you show. So we actually don't have any decimals here, so I could get rid of this, but I'm going to leave it for now. And I'm just going to say, okay, then here. And you can see now we have the pound sign and we have these the decimal places here as well. So this added in all those currency symbols to our cells. We also have to do these percentages. So again, I'm going to select the cells I want to format here. I'm going to not go into that number format menu you could do here, but you also have this section here where you can format numbers. And one of the options here is a percent style. So if we just click here, it changes all those decimals into percentages. And we're going to do the same thing here. And again, all those decimals were changed to percentages. Okay, so that looks a lot neater. It gives us a clear idea what we're dealing with money here. So it's all formatting things you can do. When you're entering information into a spreadsheet, particularly when you're going to be doing math with particularly when you're entering numbers that you want to do math with, it's usually the best idea is to keep the information as clean as possible. You don't want to be typing in dollar signs. You don't want to be typing in commas that's separating out the thousands if that's, something you have to do in the spreadsheet. You want to do all that formatting after the fact using the formatting commands. Excel's much better at this than it used to be, but it used to be a real problem when you're working in a spreadsheet. If you put any information into a cell that you wanted to do math with that wasn't a number or a decimal point, Excel wouldn't use it. Excel would think that information is text and wouldn't include it in any formula you were creating. So I think it's just easier to try to keep those out, even though Excel does respond better to that now than it used to. There is one important, and we'll go over this a little bit more when we talk about address books next week, but there is one important place where that text number distinction becomes very important, and that is when you're dealing with zip codes in certain parts of the country, namely right here. So if you have a zip code that starts with a 0, like our zip codes do, like 07054, and you just enter that into Excel and hit the Enter key, it's going to get rid of that first 0, because if that's a number, it doesn't make any sense to have a 0 there. Excel's looking at that going, well, why is that 0 there? It's probably a typo. We're going to get rid of it and make this 7054. So when you are doing this, there's a really quick fix. And that just is before you start typing in your zip code, you hit the apostrophe key, then you type it in. That apostrophe tells Excel, this is text, not a number. So don't get rid of that first 0. So that is something important to keep in mind if you're ever going to be doing something with zip codes. And we'll talk a little bit more about this next week when we talk about doing address books. Okay, so before we move on to looking at some formatting, we're going to fonts, borders, that kind of thing. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Okay, so now we're going to be doing some formatting here. We're going to start right up here with our title right here. And I want that to stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to make it bold. And I'm going to adjust the font size up here to 14 point. Font changes pretty much work the same way that they do in pretty much any Office program, so Word, etc. You just select the text you want to change and you make the changes you want. We're also going to make this top row here bold as well. And I think I'm going to do the first column as well bold, just to make it stand out a little bit more. Okay. So yeah, font's not particularly complicated. You have all the standard font options. You can change the color, you can change the size, you can do bold, italics, underline, all that stuff. That's all. You'll find that right here in the font section. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Just, again, same thing as you do with pretty much everything. You select the cells you want, and then you choose the format you want. We're now going to work a little bit with alignment. And that does function a little bit differently in Excel than it does in other programs. In particular, there are sort of two kinds of alignment you are going to be dealing with. The first one is alignment within a cell. And what that means is you're going to, when you align something either left, center, or right, it aligns within the cell, not across different cells. So let's say we want to center these headers, these ones here. I'm just going to select them. And then the alignment section, I'm going to select center. And you notice it centered them within each cell. It didn't center them across or anything like that. Now here we have our title up here. And let's say we want this to be centered over the entire sheet. And actually, so we're going to have to select all the cells. I'm going to select all the cells we want to center it across. And then we're going to use a command here that says merge and center. And what this is going to do is it's going to make all of those cells one great big cell, and then it's going to center our title within that one great big cell. There you go. So now that's centered across it. Also notice here we got a little bit of an issue here with spacing with the centering. So now you notice it's moved it off to the side and we can't see it. You can just use Autofit to make that cell bigger. Or we could have gone back to the left alignment. That would work as well. I actually think I'm going to undo that. Changing that alignment back to left for that particular cell works a little bit better. Okay. So yeah, so sometimes, alignment can cause strange things to happen if you have different cell widths. But yeah, so just keep an eye on that while you're working. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to putting some borders in place. Now, you're looking at this sheet and you're seeing all these lines here that mark out the cells in this. And if you were to print the sheet as it is right now, you wouldn't see those lines. Everything would be nice and lined up in rows and columns, but those lines wouldn't be visible. There is an option when you're printing to just say print grid lines, and then the existing lines that are in the spreadsheet will print. But I actually like to do something a little bit more complicated with lines, because I think you can do some really nice things with borders to draw out and draw the eye to different parts of your spreadsheet. So we're going to do some work on that now. And we're going to start first by putting a large, thick box around the entirety of our spreadsheet. So I'm just going to select all the cells. And then I'm going to go up here. This is our border options. And from this list of drop downs, I'm going to pick a thick outside border. And that just drew a thick box around the outside of our data. And you can't see it on the left and the top, but it is there. So you have a thick box around all of the cells. I also want to add some thin borders as well. So I want thin borders between all of our cells here. Let's go right there. And I'm going to click here and don't really see the option I want here on the drop down. So I'm going to go down to the more borders option here. And this is showing you sort of a version of what you're trying to, what you currently have border of the cells you currently have selected. It's showing you what borders you currently have in position here. So right now we just have that thick border on the left-hand side. And we have here different kinds of border styles we can choose from. I want to use a thinner border here, so I'm going to click on that there. And then I'm just going to click here to put some inside borders in place. And click on OK. I think I might need to, oops. What do I want to do? Yeah, I think I need to just do this quick here. Okay, so now we have that here. I also want to do a little bit to draw attention to certain sections of the spreadsheet. So I'm going to start here with this top row. Select it right there. And what I want to do here is I want a thick top and bottom border on this. So I'm going to go again to that more borders option and choose the thicker option here. And then I'm just going to pick the top and bottom here. And it's going to go right into there. So now we have a heavier border there. I'm also going to put one on the bottom here. Just the bottom on this one. Actually, thick bottom borders, one of our drop-down options. Kind of nice. So now we have this all blocked off. And I'm going to do a little bit similar here. And I'm going to go to the more borders. And I'm going to put a thick top border and then a thin inside border on this particular selection. So now we have that blocked off as well. So does anyone have any questions on the borders before I move on to the shading options? Okay, so I'm going to start with Bernard and then go on to Gloria, okay? So Bernard, what's your question? Bernard? Okay, I can't hear you, so I don't know if you're having a problem with your mic. If you can put your question in the chat if you can't get it up and working. Gloria, what's your question?
Did I miss it? Like on the interior lines, you know, the lines from January to total, how do you get that grid to get printed? You said like, if you don't select it, did you select them already to be printed or are they going to be floating?
We're not working on print area right now. This is just putting the borders in place.
Oh, so, but there's no grid between those numbers. If you did print it, if it would just be floating on the sheet.
Yeah, if you did print, if you create a spreadsheet and you just print it, there's no lines will be visible between your cells unless you pick the print grid line options at the print option or you put borders in like I just did. Okay,
so if I went to print, then I would tell to put, I would say print grid or something like that.
There's an option in there where you'd say print grid lines and then it would put those, just the basic lines.
Would they be thin lines?
They'll be thin lines.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have all our borders in place. Okay, Rishi, I think you're having problems with your mic too. So if you could just put the question in the chat, that would be good. Okay. Okay, so we want to put some shading in. So in particular, I want to put shading on the totals. So I'm just going to select those cells that I want shaded. So I'm going to do totals and percentages of cells here. Just so you know, it sounds like we're getting a little bit of thunderstorm here, so hopefully nothing will happen power-wise, but just warning you, if this suddenly stops, that might be what happened, okay? So just a little bit of a warning that I am hearing some thunder here, okay? So once you've selected the cells you want to put the shading in place, you then go up here to this paint bucket icon, and from there you can pick whatever color you want to shade those cells. Okay, so I did some rows here. You can also do columns. So let's say I want to do that total column. Again, I can pick the shading for that. So shading's really simple. You just select what you want to color, and then you just pick the color you want. And you can do whatever color you like. Just make sure it's light enough that you can read the text through it. Okay. So let's see here. Now that we have that shading and everything in place, I don't think I need this row separating these two sections of the spreadsheet. So I'm actually going to get rid of that. So like you can insert rows, you can also delete them. So I'm going to select the row I want to delete and go here to the delete command. And I'm going to say delete sheet rows. Now, you do have to be somewhat careful when you're deleting rows and columns, because if you only have a few cells selected and you choose to shift cells in the wrong way, it can throw off your formulas. So do be very careful when you're deleting cells from a spreadsheet. And I suggest that whenever you do, as much as possible, do entire rows or entire columns, because otherwise things can get out of alignment and then stuff stops working essentially. Okay. Okay, so we have here our current sheet. So we have all this information here. And it's really nicely organized by month and everything, but these things aren't in alphabetical order, and I like them to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the cells for what I want to sort. And then I'm going to go up here to the sort and filter command and just say sort A to Z. And from there, it'll do that automatically by this first column we have here. So that sorted all the information, and now it's in alphabetical order. And yes, everything stayed correctly across for each row. So it sorted all the data. It didn't just sort this particular column. And that's because I selected all of them. You have to be careful when you're sorting, again, like with deleting or inserting rows and columns, you have to be careful when you're selecting data to do a sort to make sure you get all the data you want to sort, so that if you just sort the one column, if it gets out of alignment, you'll have the numbers in the wrong place, will correspond to the wrong category in this particular case. So make sure if you're doing sorting or anything like that, make sure you select all the data you can. Okay. So our spreadsheet is done. It's ready to be printed. So we're going to go now into our printing options. So we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Print. Okay. So here we're seeing on the right-hand side, there's a preview of what our document is going to look like. Right now, we got a bit of a problem in that it's stretching across 3 sheets. Not very well. That's going to be kind of hard to read. So we're going to make some changes to this to make it a little bit more readable. First thing we're going to do is we have a very long spreadsheet, and we're putting it onto this relatively small piece of paper. So we're going to start by switching the page orientation from portrait to landscape, which is going to turn it on its side, and it's going to see we can right now include a whole lot more of our spreadsheet on that sheet. Next thing option we have here is we still have a fair amount of data hanging out in our second sheet, and we could print it like this with 2 different sheets, but we also have the option to do something called scaling. And what scaling does is it shrinks the sheet so that you can fit certain parts of it on one page. I want to fit all the columns on one page, so I'm going to pick that option on scaling. And now it's shrunk it down, and it all fits on one page. The thing with this is, and this is going to be a thing with a lot of spreadsheets, and this also goes to when you're formatting a sheet and thinking about how to set it up, you might want to think about how you're going to be presenting this ultimately. Because if you have to present it in a printed out version, you have to take in consideration what size paper you have access to, and how big and small you can make it, and whether or not there's a different way to organize the information so it fits better on one sheet. So for this is if I printed this out, this would be very small to read. It's just the sheet is really too long for the space we have. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to change the page size. So right now we're using letter paper. I'm going to switch that to legal paper, which is longer. And now we're getting something. This is going to be much easier to read than the other one. So if you can print on legal paper and you have a long spreadsheet like this, that is an option you can take. Okay, so in addition here, we have this thing as a sales by product category. It's got all this information in it, but we have no idea what the store is that's selling this information, that this comes from. We don't know when this was printed. We don't know how many pages are in it. So there's like a lot of different things that are not included on this sheet. And you can put titles and information like that within your spreadsheet itself. I generally don't like to do that. I prefer to put information like that in the headers and footers of a printout, so it's there, but it's not cluttering up your sheet. So we're going to go here to the page setup option. And then we're going to go to the header and footer section. And we'll start with our header. I'm going to do a custom header. And I'm just going to put it in the center section of the header, because you have 3 different sections of the header and footer you can work in, a left, a center, and a right. We're going to work with the center here. I want to adjust the font, and I'm going to make it bigger. Let's do 20 point and bold. And then I'm just going to type in the text I want. And then say OK. I'm going to say OK again. You notice now we have the header here for the title. That would appear on every page of our document. If we had more than one page in our document, right now we just have the one, so it's only seeing it on one page. From here, I'm also going to do a footer. And my footer is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to put in some automatic pieces of information into our footer that will show up and update automatically whenever we print this out. So I'm going to start first by putting in a date. So I'm going to use the insert date here to put the date on the left-hand side of the page. And in the right side, I'm going to put the page numbers in. So I'm going to put page, the number of the page that we're currently looking at, and then of, and then the total number of pages in the document. And I really recommend, especially with spreadsheets, that you put that page number of blank, whatever, how many pages are on the document. Just because, again, of the tendency for columns and rows to go off on their own pages, if you put that information in it, it'll make sure that anyone you're giving this to will know whether or not they have all the pages that are included within the document. Let's say OK there. OK, one more time. And it's a little hard to see. I don't think I can zoom in, unfortunately. But you see right down here, we have the date here. And then we have page 1 of 1, because we only have one page in this document, down here on the right-hand side. So headers and footers are a good way to add extra information like that to your document. And again, these will all update automatically. So if you add pages to the document, that will be reflected down here at the bottom here. So you don't have to do any sort of manual work to keep that organized. Okay, so that is about it for the class. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. All right, so we'll start with Garima. Garima, what's your question?
Hi. My first question would be, it's not in the sheet, my date is not appearing. It still shows date. I don't know how to do that. And second thing, if you can quickly go on conditional formatting. If something is alarming, how can we find it out and tag in our sheet that this needs attention? Something
Conditional formatting.
like color coding or something?
Yeah, I know what it is.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna do a little bit on conditional next week.
Okay.
So I can do really quickly. So conditional formatting lets, like, you set certain color rules for that. So if you wanted to, I don't know, let's just do anything greater than, I don't know, 4,000. 4,000 will appear with this particular formatting. So if you do
Okay.
that, that's what it does. So that's some very basic what conditional formatting is. Okay.
And for the date,
Yeah. So did you use the
was there any formula or anything?
it's not really the date down here? Which you're
Yes.
okay. So what I did there is there are date formulas that you can use within a spreadsheet, but this is a little different than those.
Mhm.
I'm just using here. If you look here,
Okay.
insert date button, and that's what I'm using for that.
Okay.
There
I
are-
actually did it manually. That's why
Yeah.
it didn't today. Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
there are day and date formulas that you can use, and you can actually do math where you're calculating lengths of time and things like that. But that's not what you're using here. Here it's just in simple insert date command that they have up here.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, so Gloria, you're next on my list. What's your question?
Could you show how to alphabetize again?
Okay, kind of hard to do just because it's already in alphabetical order, but I could reverse the alphabetical order.
That's right.
Yeah, so in this particular case, I'm selecting all the cells I want to include with an alphabetization. So notice here, I have the total and percentage of sales down here, and I also have category up here. I don't want that information in my sort, so I'm just going to select everything that's in between those. And then I'm going here to the sort and filter. And
Where is that?
that's over here on the far right-hand side, just says sort and filter.
Oh, I see. I get.
So because I already did the sort A to Z, I'll just reverse it. B to A.
Okay. I get it.
Yeah, okay.
And can I ask you one more question?
Yeah.
The Zoom thing you had on hands, you said it was going to be on YouTube. Is it on YouTube yet?
It should be.
And how do I get to it? Do I just go on YouTube Parsippany Library?
Yeah, if you go to our YouTube channel, you should be able to find it there. I'll double check with the person who puts the things on YouTube to make sure everything's gotten up there, okay?
You have your own channel on YouTube?
Yes, we do.
How do I get to it?
Just search Parsippany Library. That should get you to it.
When I'm in YouTube?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks for checking with that woman or person.
Okay. Let's see. Maria, what's your question?
I actually have the same question as Gloria's as far as the accessing from the YouTube channel, because I did search for all the classes that I have attended recently with you. Again, this is a good refresher. The only thing is like I've not seen any of our classes of recent, and that's why I was trying to say, is it the words or the search criteria I was keying in? Because I was using Parsippany Library, and the only things that I've seen there were 2 Google Docs that were kind of recent, but all the rest of the videos in there were other than like technical courses, or they were really old.
All right, I'm taking a look here because I haven't looked at there.
I was wondering maybe there's an expiration or they've not just been posted.
So let me I'm looking at the channel right now. There's some stuff.
Or like how YouTube sometimes would ask you to get a subscription or something.
So you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, which might be a good idea to do that.
Is that like a paid thing?
No.
Because there's sometimes when I go to YouTube, it almost asks me to sort of like get a paid membership.
Yeah, they have their own thing but for our stuff you don't need that. You can just subscribe. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
Let me switch my screen sharing over to the YouTube channel.
Yeah, please.
Hold on.
Wow, got dark.
Okay, so here I am at the YouTube channel. So I can see here there's some stuff that was posted this week or last week. But I am seeing, oops, don't want to play that. That's reason videos. I see here, there's the Google Slides from 3 weeks ago. So maybe there's Google Sheets too. So there are some stuff up here. I'll have to double check with them to make sure that they're getting the things up after they're done. So yeah, but so you know what I'm gonna do is I did a couple months ago, I did a playlist that was just the computer stuff. I might do that again. Let's see. Yeah, I did the tech videos playlist. I think I might do one for the computer classes as well. So just so they're all in one place. So if you were at our channel and you go to playlist, you should see there. So I'll try to get that done probably by the end of the week. I'll have that up, okay?
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And
Yeah.
if I was here and I got Parsippany, how would I find the hand thing? Like,
The hand thing?
so you remember you had a Zoom thing last week on the hands, the different things of the hand?
Oh, okay.
But
That's
didn't
not
show.
that's not my program. And for the stuff that I'm not doing, whether or not it goes up on YouTube depends on the speaker. And some of the speakers don't want this or don't want to put their stuff up there. So if there's another program that's not technical and you don't see it on YouTube, it's probably because the speaker didn't want to put it up.
Okay, so I would put the title. Okay, so I would just scroll through your videos to see.
Yeah, scroll through. If you don't see it, that's probably the case, is that whoever was doing
Okay.
it didn't want it up.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So I got a couple questions of the chat. Just quickly, where the header and footer button is. I gotta share. Hold on. Header and footer. Typically, I go to it from the straight from the print menu. So if you're in the print menu, you go to page setup down here, and that'll get you to the header and footer. I think you can also get to it on the page layout tab. Is it here? I don't know.
Page setup.
Insert.
Yeah, where is?
Do you see page setup? Page setup?
Yeah, so I think you'd have to pull out, then you'd pull out the page setup section of the menu on the page layout. But like I said, I usually go right from the print menu into the page setup down at the bottom. Okay. All right, I think I got everyone that initially raised their hand. I'm gonna lower them now. And if anyone has any other questions, just let's do, I got like 2 more minutes and the rain sounds like it's really coming down. So does anyone have any final questions? Okay then. Thank you all for coming. Hopefully I'll see you next week when we're talking about how to do an address book. Otherwise, have a good day and I'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.